but I will still fight for her rights. I will still march for her rights, even as she tramples mine.
I think the world's a better place when men and women walk side by side in their power together. There's a divine feminine and there's a divine masculine in every single one of us. And so to deny that is to deny who you are.
We'll get comments that say, well, it's not masculinity if it's toxic. And I'm always like, I agree, but I think our definition of masculinity is very different. Healthy masculinity is not toxic. When I say toxic masculinity, I mean this self-stifling masculinity that tells you you can't be vulnerable, that tells you as a man to stamp out your own light. That is toxic. It's all about us, and it's time to bow down. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bow Down. Dennis, as always, so lovely to see you, and I am excited to dive into what we have. We both stumbled across a TikTok video that talks about a lot of what we like to talk about, so I think we're going to start there and then just see where the conversation takes us.
I love it. Yeah. Reese, as always, so great to be here. Great to see you. Lovely, as always. I'm always amazed that I get to be co-host with you, and I love it. So yeah, I'm very curious. It's funny how we both came across this. I had shared it with you, but you had already seen it, and you were going to share it with me. So it was one of those. When something like that happens, it's it's serendipitous, and there's synchronicities, but at the same time, I take notice of those things. So we're going to play it, watch it, and just talk about it. And it may be great. It may be maybe not so great. You guys let us know, but it'll be authentic. Whatever it is, it'll be authentic, which is all we can really hope for. So
exactly. Here we go.
Somewhere out there in a podcast lit apartment stacked with empty takeout boxes and Jordan Peterson hardcovers, a lonely Republican man is wondering why no one loves him. And I want to be kind. God help me, I do, but it's hard. Because this epidemic of male loneliness on the right, it's not about politics. It's not about masculinity being under attack or that feminism ruined the dance. It's because they keep trying to court women that only exist in campaign ads and TikTok thirst traps made for profit. These men are chasing an idea of womanhood that doesn't exist anywhere outside a screen or a fantasy. Some hyper-submissive, Bible-toting, Instagram-polished Stepford Barbie who votes red, never talks back, and thinks empathy is a liberal plot to weaken men. But here's a kicker. Even the women pretending to be that don't believe in it. The influencers they idolize, they're not pious homemakers, they're power chasers. They want the clicks, the contracts, the proximity to men with microphones and donor lists. They don't worship their husbands, they worship the algorithm. And half the time, they're just waiting for the prenup to ripen. These aren't Tradwives, they're Griftwives, playing a part for the brand deal. And the men are just marks in a pyramid scheme with an American flag draped over it. To be completely fair, not every woman who chooses a traditional path is part of this performance. There are lots of women out here building homes and raising children with strength and dignity and clarity, and not because they were told to, but because they want to. And that's real, and it's beautiful, and this isn't about them. This is about the costume version. Because these men aren't in love with women, they're in love with control. They're in love with a world where women need them, admire them, flatter them, without ever challenging them. That's not partnership. That's not love. That's a mirror. And it's why they stay lonely. Because the moment they meet a real woman with a spine and a voice and a soul, they flinch. They mock liberal women like they're the enemy of happiness, like liberal is some character flaw, as if a woman who believes in health care, bodily autonomy, and civil rights is somehow a threat. As if the things that make women radiant, kindness, curiosity, imagination, empathy, are liabilities. They sneer at emotional intelligence like it's weakness because it terrifies them. Because they know somewhere deep in that fragile chest that love is an act of vulnerability, and they haven't been vulnerable since they were 12 years old and someone told them to stop crying. So let me be clear. Loneliness is real, pain is real, and men across the country are struggling with isolation, depression, and the ache of not feeling needed. But the solution isn't fantasy, and it isn't rage, and it damn sure isn't doubling down on power games that were rigged from the start. Real connection doesn't come from dominance, it comes from truth. And truth is hard. Truth is waking up and realizing that no one's coming to save you with a flag and a casserole, that the version of womanhood you were promised doesn't exist. And not because it's been stolen, but because it was always a lie. Women are not rewards for loyalty to a political party. Love is not a campaign strategy, and that the problem isn't that women have changed, it's that you haven't. The women you've written off, they are glorious, not in the billboard way, not in the likes per post kind of way, but in the way a field of sunflowers is glorious, resilient, radiant, and unapologetically alive. They are women of wild laughter and rich grace. They cry at documentaries and cuss at politicians. They bake pies with family recipes and organize fundraisers between shifts. They'll read Baldwin and teach your kids to question everything. They'll march for your rights even when you're mocking theirs. They are sharp, and not just in wit, but in moral clarity. They know what justice looks like because they've had to live without it. They'll fight like hell for trans kids, for healthcare, for teachers, for you, even when you dismiss them as too emotional, because their hearts are not weaknesses, they're engines, and they don't run out. They are open-minded, but don't confuse that with soft. They'll sit with hard truths, but they won't coddle your fragile pride. They want conversations, not control. They want partners, not projects. They'll meet you where you are, but only if you're moving forward, because standing still doesn't suit them. They have too much to do. And if you're lucky, they'll love you back, not because you performed strength, but because you showed them your real self. They'll hold you accountable. They'll pull you toward growth and still curl up beside you like the world's not burning to the ground. These women are everything the right pretends to worship and everything it quietly fears. They are strong, compassionate, brilliant, dangerous to small men with big microphones. They are not just liberal women. They are the moral spine of this country, the soul of resistance, the reason books are written and protests are planned and dinners are cooked even after hard days. And while you were mocking them, they were saving the world you sulk in. So stop pretending this loneliness epidemic is about politics, because it's about ego and it's about fear. It's about boys told never to cry growing into men who don't know how to love. It's about a generation of men who were promised the world and now can't make eye contact with it. So if you want to be loved, be worth loving, not with a six-pack or a sermon, but with kindness, with truth, with a terrifying, liberating act of being real. And if you can't do that, if you'd rather stay in an echo chamber and double down on the fantasy and chase cartoon women through an algorithm built by men who hate you, then by all means, be lonely. But don't blame women for it. Defiance till death.
Boom. Yeah. Mic drop, I think.
So that is from David Miller, 62 on TikTok, spelled DEVID Miller. We'll have it linked down below if you would like to go check out his account. Definitely go support that video. I don't know much else about this creator besides that video, so I'll just throw that out there. But I think this raises a plethora of very, very important points. Plenty to unpack here, but I guess, Dennis, what made you, when you see this, you said a friend sent it to you, what made you want to send it to me? What really struck a chord with you?
Yeah, I felt that David, I guess, did an incredible job of cutting right to the chase of the so-called epidemic of male loneliness, and really told the harsh truth. To me, I think the truest truth is that all of these people who are peddling this stuff, particularly on like TikTok and all these social media, they don't believe in it. It's all an act. I mean, in the same way that Fox News is an act, and the all of this is it's acting, and somehow I don't know. I guess I just feel there's a part of me that feels sad for these men that they don't know any better. Part of me is angry at both at the men who perpetuate this, like as they said, the microphone, the small men with big microphones, and I think there's a lot of them, and as well as the what phrase did he use?
Griftwives.
Not Tradwives, Griftwives. I love that, and
yeah, me too.
And yeah, because and again, it's not to say that this is that if this is your it was what feels right to you as a woman, that, hey, I just want to bake pies. I love pies. This is what I want. This is the peace that I need in my life. Again, I don't have any issue with that. And that's beautiful. And there's nothing wrong. And it's a lovely thing to be a mother and a homemaker and whatever it is you want to do, to be whatever a traditional wife is. Although I would argue that there is no, like, wives were different things in different places. So it's traditional suggests somehow
what does that even mean?
Women weren't doing the same thing 100 years ago, 500 years ago. I suspect they were the same, so I don't know that there really is a traditional wife, but I don't know, I guess, but to answer your question, why did I send it to you is I don't know. I felt it was very relevant to sort of all of the things we've been talking about. And it's another aspect. And honestly, I wanted to get your thoughts too, to enlighten me from your, I can hear it as somebody who I don't think ever wanted, like, I never, even in my ridiculously conservative, ultra Christian phase in high school, early college, um, it's not what I wanted anyway. So kind of the whole chasing that fantasy, that was never a fantasy of mine. So I'm curious though. So in that sense, like, it didn't speak to me in that way, but I was more curious about from your perspective, and like how did you see it? Like how did it hit you from a woman hearing that? Again, somebody who's probably never wanted to be a trad
Right.
wife. Like that's never been your path either. But I think that's why I shared it with you, because I just was hungry to hear your take and your voice in this. So lay it on me.
Thank you. When I first saw this, it really resonates with me. And first and foremost, like, kudos to anyone for putting something out on social media that is authentic, that is real, that is clearly well thought out, well written, and not just for clicks. He's not framing it in any specific way to try and get any sort of specific feedback. It was clearly just important to him that he made his voice heard about this thing that he is witnessing and experiencing in his real life, and wanted to frame it in a very poignant, concise, and powerful way. And so I just really respect that. And especially when someone who, if I passed them at the grocery store, would think that they would probably be conservative based on how he looks, I think it's really great for masculine men to portray healthy masculinity while also holding these viewpoints. So obviously that's not like necessary, and there's no one perfect or cookie cutter type of masculinity, but I'll just throw that out there too. Yeah, and I have so many thoughts about so many different things that he brought up, but I guess I'll start with what you said about the Griftwives, because that was certainly a point that resonated with me too. And we've talked a little bit in the past about choice feminism and how flawed choice feminism is, which I'll just remind listeners who may not remember, but choice feminism is the idea that any choice that a woman makes is a feminist act inherently because it is a woman making a choice. And that is just an incorrect view of feminism. Feminism is an ideology that is collective, that is communal, and is grounded and rooted in all persons having equal access to opportunity, growth, and meaning making. Not just women. And that also means that women have the responsibility to make choices that further the collective goal of feminism, not just your own personal selfish desires. Not that having your own desires is inherently selfish, but for the sake of that, a woman being a tradwife on TikTok is not a feminist act. If you believe in choice feminism, maybe you would define that as feminist. But for me, I don't agree with choice feminism because I believe that it is a communal and collective effort, not just about certain women having that, the the access to that. Because the added layer here is that griftwives overwhelmingly are white women. And I think that that bears noting. That is important to talk about. And a lot of choice feminists who are trying to defend the right for women to be conservative and spout this really harmful rhetoric about, any sort of political or social happenings that are going on, it's flawed thinking, right? Because you can't make a choice that flies in the face of feminism and call it feminist just because you're a woman. The other thing that I wanted to add here, besides most of these griftwives being white, is also the fact that it is a grift, which inherently means a lie. There are so many accounts of the stay-at-home mom, the stay-at-home girlfriend, the Tradwife, perfect Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls Wilder, little cute prairie dress, baking a pie with a kid on her hip that says, I love not having a job. I love having a man that's strong and masculine enough to provide for me. Girlfriend, then why are you posting on social media about it? Last I checked, your 300,000 followers are paying your bills. Last I checked, your social media is your job. So not only is it a grift in that any person who's posting on social media is only showing you one very flat dimension of who they are and what their life looks like, but also in this specific circumstance, they're just flat out lying to you by saying, I love not having a job and my husband completely providing for the family. Because you watching these videos is providing for the family. This woman making this content is providing for the family. She is actively contributing to the family. And sure, there's some inherent judgment potentially about how social media is not a real job or content creation isn't a real job. And that's, a debate that could be had. But if we're just comparing like income, money that's coming in, she is very much contributing to the household purely financially, just on social media income, but also the idea that housewifery is not a job is also a thing that's being proliferated through that rhetoric. So yeah, those are some initial thoughts on the griftwife, tradwife representation that we're seeing, that it is just such a facade. And I know that people know that and people see that, but it bears repeating because there's a reason why it works. There's a reason why it speaks to the fears and insecurities and hopes and dreams of people, because that's why they're watching it. And you can't grift for something if it's not getting you clicks. And the conservative grift is much easier than the progressive grift. That's something that a lot of progressive creators that I watch will talk about, where they'll get people in their comments saying, like, you're just a grifter, you don't believe in these things. And they're like, if I wanted to just be a grifter and make money, I would go put a Trump hat on and
seriously, yeah.
It's truly like, it's so much easier to grift for one side than the other. And yeah. And so all that to say, like, yes, white women, we need to be holding ourselves and each other accountable to our responsibility within feminism, because yes, we are a minority in that we're women. However, our privilege cannot be understated or cannot be overstated, in that I will never, ever understand what it is like to be a person of color. And Black women die obscenely more likely in childbirth and are ignored so much more in the medical system. And of course, are far likelier victims of sexual violence and police brutality. And then, and that's just Black women. We could also go into any other number of minorities within women, trans women, Asian women, Indigenous women. Like, AAPI hate is extremely prolific. So I just, as a white woman, I feel like it's important to underline, to doubly and triply underline that as well, that is something that within feminism we need to be not just aware of, but actively talking about too. Feminism has to be anti-racist and pro-trans and protect trans lives as well. Yeah. Thoughts? I kind of just went off there for a little bit, but
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think it's all, I mean, I agree with everything. Without question. I guess I do have, what popped in as you were talking, it just, I struggle to understand why, for me personally, I would not want that in a partner. A subservient, just bake pot. Like, I don't know. Like does not, that's never been something I would have, as I said, it wasn't something and again, it's not to be, oh, I'm so great, I'm so enlightened or anything else. None of that. I mean, because you like what you like, whatever. But for whatever reason, that traditional thing never worked for me. And I don't know. I guess I struggle to understand what the, like, what the, like, what's in it for the guy? Like, is it so hard to cook or, so hard to do chores? Like you need somebody to wipe your ass for you? I mean, is it just like, is it a mother thing? Like you want somebody to take care of? Like, and again, I don't mean this disparagingly. And I genuinely don't understand it. Why you wouldn't want to partner with somebody equally or more powerful than you are. Like,
yeah.
Why would you? And again, that's not to, and I say that in the way of, I don't want to suggest somehow that even if you are a homemaker and that's a traditional wife,
right,
whatever you want to call it, that you have no power, because I don't believe that. I believe whatever role you play, you are incredibly powerful. So it's not about that, but I don't understand why that would be like a goal. Like why, as a man, you would want a woman who you would have control over. Like what's the fun in that, frankly? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I and maybe I'm a different breed. I don't know. I don't, and again, it's not about, oh, I'm better or worse than anyone else. It's not about that. I'm just curious. Like, what is the I mean, so, but let me ask it, and maybe you feel the same way. I don't know, because it strikes me just from some of our conversations and learning about your backstory and even things in high school. Like, it doesn't strike me that this was ever something that would be in your horizon, like in your worldview, as like, this is what I want. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to presume. Maybe you were very different in middle school. I have no idea. But it just, that's not the energy I've ever gotten in our conversations and from knowing you. And so I guess I would ask, like, why do you think, because there are absolutely women, because I've seen, Reddit threads, I've seen, different posts about it where, I mean, from guys like, hey, I tried to be, I was vulnerable and my girlfriend, my wife, my significant other, whatever the case was, just sort of like hammered me with it. And so now I, like made fun of, like hurt me with it and things of that nature, so clearly there are women out there who think weakness, showing any kind of weakness, having a man having emotions is wrong, is feminine, is not masculine, and is not what they want. And I guess I'm curious from your perspective as a woman, someone who, why is that? Like, what do you think about it? Like, I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah. I think, one, to speak to the first part of what you were talking about, it confounds me too, because it's something that it almost reminds me of, like, there's a piece of it that reminds me of narcissism, where it's like, when there is someone who like truly suffers from like narcissistic personality disorder and is very disordered in their thinking about themselves and how they approach relationships, that comes from deep, deep, deep insecurity built out of childhood trauma and chemical imbalances in your brain. But it always comes from insecurity, and that's why all of the methods to deal with a narcissist are about gray rock, right? You can't give them something to latch onto to hurt you, but you also can't inflate their ego because that allows them to further justify their behavior without actually looking at the root cause of insecurity underneath, to then be able to hopefully get treatment in a way that is healing and growth oriented one way. The other thing that this idea of men not wanting an equal partner, and it's like, why would you want someone who basically is subservient to you? Like, what's attractive to you about that? The other thing that it makes me think of is is like middle school mean girl behavior. In middle school, there is this thing that I've experienced. I'm sure other women out there will absolutely know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm sure most humans, men, women, non-binary, experience this, where when you're younger and there's a girl who is pretty, she's smart, she's nice, she's good at sports, and it just makes you mad. You just don't like her because how dare she be pretty, smart, nice, and talented? Like, what the hell? That, I hate you. I hate you. How dare you? And in middle school, that deep insecurity in me would say, well, there has to be something wrong, and she actually really isn't that nice, and, you know, I'm smarter than her, or whatever. You kind of jump there.
Mm-hmm.
As you get older and you realize, no, she just is pretty and smart and nice and talented. But that makes me want to be her friend. That's the type of woman I want to surround myself with because that's the type of woman I want to be. And the only way that I've been able to do that as a woman and to say, like, to grow from being 12 and deeply insecure into now an adult who is like, oh, that's a badass woman. I want her on my team, right? As opposed to I need to tear her down. And I think that there's something similar that happens there where it's like this is when men see badass women, there's a similar feeling of threat that can come in for some reason that, again, has to be rooted in insecurity. But I think the rational response from a healed, well-adjusted individual is, I want them on my team, right? And so I think that really is the shift there. Of course, there's so much more nuance, but I just always have to go back to insecurity for men, which again is largely due to the patriarchy telling them they can't be vulnerable and heal. And then to speak to women who further the negative patterns of patriarchy and don't create spaces for men to be vulnerable with them. On one hand, I think that stems from internalized misogyny on the women's part a lot of the time. You know, like women aren't a monolith and aren't all perfectly healed and perfect arbiters of feminism and, you know, treating men non-toxically as well. And so I think part of that is just the fear of, you know, there is something to if you've been told your whole life a man is supposed to protect you, and then you see a chink in the armor, that it could create a fear response really easily in a woman. But that's why it's so important for us as women to actively choose what we want in a man and create a space for vulnerability. I think also there's a way to start to shift these behaviors internal to a relationship that isn't necessarily out of the blue. You just break down in front of your partner. Not to say that that's necessarily what's happening every single time that a man feels like he was vulnerable and then gets beaten down because of it from a woman partner. But I think that there could theoretically sometimes be this is the first time a man has ever been vulnerable. And it could be a lot for that partner to hold and carry. And that partner may not be equipped to hold your vulnerability in that moment, whether because they have never seen this from you before, and any dramatic change from your life partner is going to be shocking and is going to be different, but also they may, theoretically, if the woman's going through something of their own at that time, they may not have the bandwidth to deal with something. And I could absolutely see a man saying something that's a really big deal to him, and his partner not thinking that that's a really big deal, but maybe had a bad day, being like, yeah, okay, honey, and just moving on. And then that just absolutely shutting the man down. And they just didn't, it was just a misfire, right? So I think there's a lot of nuance there. But again, that's why it's so important that this starts from the beginning of a relationship. And if you're in a relationship and you're actively trying to repair some of these patterns that maybe you as a couple, like if there's a couple listening to this right now, have fallen into the past, and now you're trying to be more feminist as a partnership, like really talking about it. And even though this is like maybe an added layer of vulnerability, as the man, say like, hey, what I'm about to say is hard for me. And like, make it known that you're asking something of your partner right then that is space for your vulnerability, so that they know, and also set yourself up for success in that if you're trying to be vulnerable, maybe not in the middle of like your kid's birthday party, maybe not after they got in an argument with their boss that day, the obvious things that I'll just throw out there too. Again, not to excuse women who are doing this, because I'm sure it happens plenty of times where women are settling into their insecurity and fear-based trauma responses as well, where they do just smack down the vulnerability. But I would say they're operating out of the same internalized misogyny that the men are that are now trying to unwork this. And that's why you have to, in a partnership, undo it as a partnership.
I love that it becomes an us issue versus a your issue or my issue, which, I mean, again, I think we're just talking kind of wholesale and common sense sort of relational things, right? Like if you're with a person, really, again, it's not about making, I read something on somewhere, Reddit probably, about this, some people want to make their problems our problems, but your problems stay your problems. So my problems are our problems, but your problems are your problems. And I think that is a trap. I mean, both men and women. I don't fall into. But again, what I'm hearing from you is hey, let's have a real conversation about this. Can we really just be real? And I think maybe that authenticity is, I mean, I guess I can see that if you've built your whole relationship on this false premise of, it can be very, very difficult to break away from it. I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that would take strength on both parts, right? To do that. Another thought that I had too, Dennis, because I know that, and if you don't want to talk about this, I'm also happy to cut this part out. But one thing that came up as you were just talking was the fact that you've been with your wife for quite a long time, and you've spoken before about how you've grown. Do you feel like your relationship has evolved as your, maybe not stance, because you were never really looking for the Tradwife, but as your knowledge and passion for feminism has increased, has this been something that you have encountered as something to maybe not like work on, but to just that bared any sort of impact on your relationship at all?
Oh, absolutely. Well, yes, to all of that, and it's ongoing work. I mean, it's real easy to sit here, you and I together on this podcast and pretend like, I'm the bee's knees. Like I got this shit figured out, because I don't. Like, but what it does, what are, the work that we've been doing, the conversations, the connections that, and the space we've been holding over the last year has allowed incongruities and things that were not coherent, or that there was disconnect in my own life and in my relationship that has caused me to look at things. In terms of just what am I, what are my expectations of our relationship? How have I done things to take away my wife's voice? How, and listen, I mean, I was, without a doubt, like I was, I've gotten a lot better. I think I've tried to become more. I mean, I'm still human. I still,
well, of course,
put my legs on my pants one leg on at a time. And I probably fail more than I succeed, in all truth, in terms of, I know my heart doesn't, though. And so what all of this is, and again, intentions versus actions, I can have the best intentions, but if I'm a shitbird, I'm a shitbird. But what I can do now is say, wow, that was really shitty of me to say that. And I can have those conversations. And ideally do that faster and faster, because all of this conditioning doesn't go away.
Right.
Because all of a sudden, I'm on, we're doing this podcast, and I can believe in something and still not achieve that I can fall short of the goal of my ideals.
We all do for every
But when I
ideal.
do, I get back up and I start walking again towards it. I don't, and I admit when I've made mistakes, and sometimes I don't even see that I've made mistakes, and I need Nathan the prophet to come and tell me, hey, King David, the guy who did this is you, buddy. I mean, but that's what being around strong women, powerful women who know their power will do, is, and I think maybe a lot of men are scared of that. Honestly, and I get it. Like, it's scary to be vulnerable, to say to yourself, wow, why do I believe this? And maybe that's something I would say, even men who maybe are falling into that trap, maybe that is something that you can do to say, why do I want this? Do I really want this? Help me. Listen, if it's what you want, then that's fine. I have no issue with this. If you've explored this, you understand the issues, you go into it with eyes wide open on both sides. Cool, man. Like that, but don't be bullshitted into it. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, understand why you want this, and not because, Jordan Peterson or who, and I even say these names, I don't really espouse or follow any of these folks, and I have no animosity towards them. I also have no, no praise for them either.
Right.
It's, but just, is this what you want to be? Is this your choice? Because you're choosing it. And the thing is you're going to manifest this. If you are going, and furthermore, I would argue on the shadow side, if you really don't want a submissive tradwife, but you feel you need to, like, you're gonna manifest the opposite of, you're gonna manifest what you really want anyway, and it's just gonna be this cycle where you're never happy with what you have anyway, because it's not what you really want. So and I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, man, I wish there was like a television show or something where we find out that, like, the most trad wife, like, they actually have a completely different private dynamic. Like, that he is like the most submissive guy in the world, and she is like a hardcore, like iron fist kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that to me would be actually fascinating. Like, I would love to hear somebody who had that dynamic. Like, publicly, it looks like the wife is this traditional wife, meek and all of this, and it's all a fucking show. And in reality, like, he wears a gimp mask in every night and goes to bed in a cage. Like, that would be fascinating to me. I would love that incongruity.
It's really fascinating that I think we see that dynamic in fiction actually represented, but it's hard for us sometimes to, because fiction is fiction. This is actually a little bit of a tangent, but something that I've been working on in my own, I guess, like, metaphysic about the world and my kind of epistemology and belief system, is how real is the imaginary and how imaginary is the real, and what actually is the dividing line between those things, in the sense of, like, archetypes and yada, yada, yada. This can go in so many different directions, but I think that we have a really hard time pulling truths from things like Lord of the Rings because it is fantasy and because we live in a post Age of Enlightenment, post technological revolution world where materialism is baseline truth, even though it hasn't been for most of human history. Anything in that realm is so discounted. But then we have stories like Macbeth, which we've talked about before, where I would say to the public, right? Like we don't really get a lot of knowledge about how the king presents himself to his subjects, but on the back end, we see who's really in charge, which is Lady Macbeth, right? And it's that kind of dynamic where behind closed doors, goodness gracious, like we know exactly who's in charge there. And you hear all the time about politicians who, you know, have the perfect wife and the golden retriever and the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence, who pay sex workers that are dominatrixes to, you know, shame them or they're pay pigs for these sex workers and all of that stuff. That it's like we hear about these things and we do see it represented in literature. But when it comes to imagining a life, it's easy to not connect those dots. And I think part of what I'm saying here is that I would argue that a lot of that is because when you hear a story, our materialist worldview frames it as a falsehood as opposed to there is a truth in there. But I feel like maybe there's something else going on there too that is like just the way that social media has trained our brains to think that that we're seeing reality all the time when we just so are not. I don't know. What do you think about that? Because I agree with you that like it's not as though we see that storyline all the time, and we've certainly never seen it on like reality TV, but it is talked about. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I love the highlighting the fact that imagination is reality, because and so, you know, the idea that this is just fiction is kind of interesting to me, because there is no fiction really in some senses, and in that, particularly if it's done intentionally, and you know, like I used to, when I was younger in particular, mainly because I just don't read for pleasure the way I used to in the past. You know, I used to be a big fan of fantasy, science, you know, fantasy really, sci-fi, but more sort of medieval, like magic, you know, sort Dungeons and Dragons kind of shit. That's I always, but there's a couple of authors who you can tell like bring their own fiction, their own desires, their own kinks into their fiction, and it's always interesting to see like who and and that's what I say, like fiction like creates reality in some senses. I mean, there's that guy who did God, what was his name? He's real famous. Who basically created his comic book and turned it into a hyper sigil, essentially. I don't know if you've heard about him, but I'll have to look that up. I forget the guy's name, but he's well known in sort of the chaos magic areas and
Oh, Alan, is it Alan
yes.
Moore?
Yeah,
Alan...
it might be. I think so.
Oh, we'll link it down below because I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it goes to show that you know, fiction is not so far from reality, and you know, I do think it's interesting. You know, what's really interesting to me is that, you know, because you had brought it up about like you know, paying for dominatrixes or things of that nature, and it's just interesting that you would that it's fascinating to me that has to be paid for. Like,
yeah,
one would think that that it wouldn't be something that as a guy you should have to pay. I'm just curious, like why isn't there, if this is a natural desire for, I mean, it seems to be for a lot of people, why is that something that men then pay for?
I think
is it to like keep control? Like, hey, if I'm not paying for this, then I'm not in control. But yet the whole idea is to not be in control, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't thought about it from the financial piece being part of the control, which I think makes a lot of sense to me. I do think part of it is the shame piece that a lot of people associate sex work with shame and with guilt because you know, in this pocket that so much of our like shameful repressed desires then express themselves in sexual formats because sex is such a taboo in our puritanical society. And so I think those neural pathways get crossed. So I think part of it is that there's shame in the desire for being completely out of control and being completely dominated. And there's also shame in the desire for sex. So there's something about this wanting to be hidden that they won't even tell their wives about, right? That they won't even tell anyone in their quote unquote real life about. So it's like, well, then I have to go pay for it. So I think part of it is this shame piece. But I would bet psychologically there is probably something about, well, but I'm still paying this woman and I'll still, you know, you can kind of compartmentalize it in your mind as she's still trash and I'm still in control even after you've like ended the scene or however you might categorize the sex act, right? Yeah, so I think it does go back to the shame and insecurity, and something we've kind of been talking around is the male loneliness epidemic. And academic? Did I say academic? Epidemic.
Epidemic.
Whoa. But I think that really taps into this too, this idea of like shame and vulnerability. Like loneliness is something that people feel a lot of shame about and don't want to talk about, but therefore it perpetuates. And I think that's what happens with the portion of men who do turn to sex workers is you have this shame and insecurity, and therefore you turn to a place where you can further exercise your shame. And, you know, again, if it's two consenting adults, like who am I to judge what happens in a consenting sex work relationship like that? I'm not trying to judge that at all or say that it should be shamed or shameful, you know? But if that's psychologically how it's framed, it's like, well, I can see how you compartmentalize that in the same kind of pocket, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, yeah, I think there is a lot of shame, right? And maybe it does boil down to the Madonna whore complex, right? Like, oh, you know, I can't see my wife in this, you know, I need this. I don't really understand why, but I crave
Totally.
this interaction, like, you know, for whatever reason. And I'm curious as to what people, you know, what the reasons are. And so maybe they're scared. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe it's a question for listeners out there, particularly like if your boyfriend, significant other, partner, whatever, came home and was like, oh, you know, and had this conversation like, hey, I really want to be dominated, whatever. What is that like? Would that be disconcerting? Would that be trouble? Like how? I'm curious how different people would it be? Oh, I've been waiting for this. Like I don't, you know, cool. Like yeah, let's. I'm gonna put on a strap on. Let's go. You know, I don't know. I mean,
Right.
I'm curious about that like how, because why wouldn't you as a guy, if that's what you wanted or was interesting, why wouldn't you have a conversation about it? Like, why would this be a surprise? I mean, I guess is it I'm too ashamed of it? I mean, I could see that. It makes sense why there might be a lot of shame there.
Yeah, I think part of it is absolutely the Madonna horror complex, like you talked about, which I hadn't occurred to me until you said it. But 100% men want to marry the Madonna but have sex with the whore, right? And there is this kind of lady in the streets, freak in the sheets situation that happens that men will kind of brag about, that it's like you get both. But I think a lot of men who don't allow complexity in themselves don't allow complexity, or just general people who don't allow complexity in themselves don't allow complexity in other people. And so if you're not allowing yourself to have vulnerability or insecurity, you're certainly not going to have space for your wife to have her sexual desires and her being the kind of trophy wife on a pedestal. So you need to seek that outside of the relationship. And if that's the dynamic that you've established within your relationship, then you'd go outside your marriage or relationship or, whatever the dynamic may be. But I think I absolutely hear your point of like, if this is something that's extremely vulnerable for you, but like a deep desire, why wouldn't you share that with your most trusted person in the world who is supposed to love you more than anything and who you love more than anything? And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, oh, deep fear, deep shame, you actually can't have trust when that is just not a part of your relationship. So it's no wonder you don't feel like that would be honored or respected in your relationship. And I think another thing that we're seeing too is a little bit of a backlash from years and years and years of patriarchy and misogyny. I think women in my generation and maybe even a little bit younger, like of dating age, right? 18 and older, are having a little bit of a not puritanical backswing. I think Gen Z kind of is in some ways, which is interesting, but misandry is very much becoming popular in the sense that used to you would hear online like, I'm a feminist, but I don't hate men. And now a lot of women are very openly, no, I do hate men. Fuck men. Men suck. Period. End of story. And I think that is both of those are unnuanced takes, right? But I think that there is we've had feminism and women's suffrage and all of these things be worked towards for so long, and yet men still treat us like trash and garbage. Well, fine. I'm finally going to treat you like trash and garbage. And while I don't think that's fair, I don't think that's a nuanced or complex way to handle this situation, I don't think it actually heals anything, I can understand that reaction, right? It logically and psychologically makes sense to me. And, when I'm being very unnuanced with my friends, when I understand that they have they know where I'm coming from, and they know that I have all of these very complex takes on the way that we should handle it healthily. Yeah, I'll do that too, where some man makes a horrible comment to one of my friends at work, and the text I send back is, fuck all men, men suck, right? Even though that's so unnuanced, that's still the reaction that gets kicked out there because it is easier in unnuanced contexts, but also I think there really is an anger at, we've been working on this for so long. If you, shit or get off the pot, man. Yeah. I don't know if that totally was relevant to exactly what we were talking about, but I suppose I went there because it felt relevant for some reason.
It's all relevant, Reese. It's all relevant. Well, that's it. So that's new information to me, at least in terms of what you just said around Gen Z and just being like, no, fuck men for real.
Yeah.
I guess that begs my, you had mentioned, I guess, what the I guess there is an aspect of this whole space of like, where you just basically pay, I guess it's you just pay money, and it's like, what, Findom or something like that? Like, why don't all these Gen Z women just do that? Like, it seems like there's so many men who are just willing to pay for that. Like, literally, treat them like shit, and they want that. Like, seems like a perfect match. Like you get to, I don't know, like that. I didn't know that was a thing. Like that was actually an attitude that was, I mean, probably well deserved. Frankly, I don't know that it's helpful, but I mean,
right.
I frankly, but I don't know. Can you sublimate that somehow into?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really powerful question. And when you say that to me, I'm like, even when I'm like, ugh, I hate men, I'm very careful about the spaces in which I say that, because to me it's kind of like making an off-color joke around like mixed company, that it's like, you know, everyone makes jokes now and then that, like, for instance, I think I don't know if this is, maybe I'm gonna get canceled one day when this comes out. Every now and then I will make a suicide joke. You know, you hear like the, oh, I'm gonna kill myself joke. I do not make those jokes on podcasts, in public, around people that I am not familiar with and do not know me and do not know my relationship with mental health. I only make those jokes in spaces where I feel it is absolutely safe and appropriate to make an off-color joke like that. Same thing with the sentence like, ugh, hate all men. Because to me, it can carry some of that same charged energy of like, what are you promoting? What are you creating in the universe? And maybe even as I'm saying this, I'm like, and if I was perfectly healthy, maybe I wouldn't ever make any off-color jokes or say something unnuanced at all. But at the same time, it's like, we're humans. You have to, you know, deal with things with humor and be able to have a conversation without going into every single exception and every single contradiction and everything all the time, because you would never stop talking.
And plus, I think it would be kind of boring. Like,
yeah,
you know what?
yeah.
Like I don't, I mean, there is like, but I get what you're saying. Like, you know, you can say that to me and it's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like it's you don't, there's nuance. Like, but yes, I guess in the transcript, in the court transcript, it won't read like that, right? You know, I mean, that's what it is, you know, and part of that is just, but at the same time, fine, let them you know, my view is let people misunderstand me.
Yeah.
I'm actively trying to seek that in some senses.
Yeah.
Like, because you know what, like, men do deserve this. I mean, many, no, are all men bad? No. And in fact, you know, again, it goes back to my fundamental belief that none of us are bad. Like that ourselves, you know, are perfect. And the image of imago Dei, whatever that means, to, you know, and if feel it however you want to feel it. But I do genuinely believe that. And that goes for women, that goes for men, that goes for the worst. I mean, that even goes for all of the people that we talk about, the president, everyone. And maybe people hate on me for saying that, but I do genuinely believe at the core, self is perfect. Because I have to believe that. Now, there can be so many, and that doesn't mean I need to find that perfectness in you. It's not my responsibility to deal with you, to, you know, there's a, you know, that's the key. Like I have some family situations where, you know, a family member is just not somebody I have chosen that I'll ever want to be around the way they are. Not, you know, obviously if I have to see them at an event, okay, you know, I'm not gonna be like, well, no, I'm not gonna go to that because they're there or anything like that. But I want as little to do with this individual as possible. Until no, but that's not necessarily forever. If they were to come back and be like, wow, you know, I've been really thinking about it. I hit an inflection point. I went to therapy. I found God, whatever it is, you know, then I'm open. Like, because I don't hold grudges. I don't think I've yet to be in a situation where somebody had come to me who I felt perhaps had wronged me in the past, correctly or incorrectly, who was like, hey, I'm really sorry that this happened. Can we start over? Where I'm like, no, fuck you. Go to hell. Like, that's just not, like, and listen, I might be well within my right to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's no one that says, that I have to, you know, but that's just not who I am. Like, I'm going to, but I think, you know, I kind of got lost in there and I don't know where I was going.
No,
if I'm totally honest.
But I agree with that though. And the thing that came up for me was like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But I saw something the other day that was clearly a joke, but I kind of loved the heart behind it. That is, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on you, fool me 3 times, shame on you, fool me 4 times, shame on you. Like the fault will always lie with the person who is perpetrating the hurt against the other person. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, you believe someone is coming to you with pure heart and intention of having grown and is trying to do better, you absolutely are within your right to protect yourself any way you feel like you need to. But I don't think if it doesn't cost you anything, like in some circumstances, it may cost you something, and that's where you need to protect yourself. But if it doesn't cost you anything, then it doesn't cost you anything to give someone a second chance. And I think what I was trying to say about the like not being nuanced with language piece was, and like why don't more women want to be like a dominatrix in this way? I think one, there's still a lot of shame around sex work, and so even if you're not behaving in a like direct sexual act, dominatrixes are still sex workers, and I think a lot of women that feel like they do actually hate men still wouldn't want to be a sex worker. But then my other thought was also, there are women, such as myself, who may offhandedly say something that might lead someone to believe that. Doesn't mean that I actually do hate all men, and also doesn't mean that I would want to go down that road. But I'm sure that there are women who do self-identify very strongly as misandrists who even in a nuanced conversation would be like, no, I do hate men, that would say, yeah, and I am working on being a dominatrix because that, I guess is symbiotic in some sense. But I could see someone having that point of view, both saying, yes, and I am going to make money off of that in this way. I could also see someone saying no because it's still sex work and I don't want it to, that's not my path. And I could also see someone saying no because that is still like centering men's pleasure in some sense as well. But all that to say, I think that that's just really complicated. And it is interesting, when we started this conversation, I wasn't thinking that we would necessarily like sex work, and the sexual shame piece wasn't something that I had considered as a part of this, and it was never mentioned in the original TikTok. But I think it's interesting that it does go, like, there is something about what we're talking about that ties into that. And even in what you were just saying about like protecting yourself and putting up boundaries and barriers, it gets so complicated when you have boundaries that aren't necessarily even with specific people. One, boundaries are something you set with yourself, not specific people. But if there is someone who has specifically hurt you and you have a boundary with yourself that you will not be in certain situations with them, I think that is an easier cut and dry boundary to hold with yourself than a boundary that is, I won't let someone disrespect me. It's like, well, what does that look like? And what if that person forgives you? And what if it's low-level disrespect that is like, actually, we're going to go where I want for dinner versus like, I hate you, you're stupid. Like there's just so much there. And I think forgiveness is also a big part of this conversation too, in that like, forgiveness is a deeply vulnerable thing to give, but also to accept. And it asks you to grapple with shame, with what you've done, with what you've perpetrated against someone. And so I think that, like you said, when you were like, I've never really been in a situation where someone's come back to me and like genuinely apologized and said like, no, fuck you, like I can't do it anymore. Even if you were within your right to, I think as human beings, we all know how hard it is to truly eat crow, right? Like that is one of the hardest things. And for that to be rejected, like that, it's just really hard. That's hard. That's happened to me before, and I have also done that to someone before. And thankfully, the person that who hurt me really poorly and then came back and we had a conversation about it, and really apologized very earnestly, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not in a place to be able to accept this apology, and I don't think we can remain friends right now. A few years later, we reignited our friendship, and it has been like one of the most rewarding friendships of my life because we have been through that, you know? But at
Yeah,
the same time,
the repair,
yeah,
that just the repair is so important. Like, couples, a lot of times people, and again, maybe it depends on how you grew up. I actually think a lot of what we're talking about may well come from childhood, right? I mean, we
totally.
haven't really mentioned that, but you know, you have daddy issues, right? Everyone talks about that, like, daddy issues, problem, and so that, if you had a domineering father, or maybe on the opposites, I mean, it could just have, you had a very non-there father who was very just blah, submissive, like was just sort of went along with everything mother said, like she wore the pants in the family. I mean, it could be in either direction. It's just, I wonder. Yeah, I guess I just wonder how much of it is us just replaying our childhood in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah,
trying to resolve that. And I mean, I think the same is true on the opposite side for men who are into who want a stronger, more dominant presence in their,
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure they're just working something out as well. And is there anything, I mean, personally, I find nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I think it's
yeah,
fascinating and love it. I mean, I think whatever, as long as it's consensual
right.
and, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, why is
No.
there all this
Well,
judgment and, you're consenting adults. You can do whatever you
yeah.
want to do. That's what's awesome about being an adult.
And I
You
think like you said earlier, like if what you want really is this quote unquote traditional relationship, like if you interrogate it and you understand all the flaws with it, but you're two consenting adults that enter into that relationship, like you are allowed to do that. I may disagree with it, but the thing that I will take issue with and have animosity towards is if you're telling other people how they should live their life and that your life is the right way to do it. And that's where you get into the Tradwife, Griftwife issue. But same thing here. Like there's
So are
plenty
these
of
actually? I'm not to interrupt, Reese, but
oh no,
I don't
yeah.
really. I don't watch a whole bunch of. I don't watch TikTok, so I don't really see any of this stuff other than what you and I have talked about. But I mean, and maybe this is for other listeners too. Is there in these sort of TikToks in this space, whatever this space is this a promotion of, hey, you should be like me because of reason? Like, are they selling it, or is it, hey, this is my life, I'm awesome? Like, I'm curious what you're, because again, I don't really watch these, so maybe I
Yeah,
should, but I struggle to do so. So
I think yeah. Well, and I will say like they don't really come up on my feeds because I don't
right, yeah,
TikTok knows
knows you.
me. They're not going to serve that to me. But I see like I watch a lot of like video essays on YouTube and stuff, so I see other people talking about this a lot. So in the ones that I've seen, this is not a fully informed kind of take on it. I think it depends. It depends on the influencer and the creator, whether it's like, and I'm the best and this is how you should be living too, and I don't understand women who are feminists, which is a good chunk. Like most of these grift wives that really are grifting are capitalizing on um kind of like the comedians who aren't trying to make you laugh, but they're going for claps now, that it's like, okay, you're just saying these things because you know you'll get likes because the thing that you're saying you hate, other people hate too, and you're pandering. Um so there are that definitely exists. I'm sure there are creators out there that are just like, this is just me. This is just what I do. It's how I'm doing it. Um I think it's hard to not feel like anyone doing something like that is still not propaganda for that life in some sense, which is difficult, but at the same time, I'm definitely much more comfortable with that. And I've seen a few creators who are like stay-at-home moms or doing kind of the homesteading. Like, homesteading is very much a thing that people are creating content around. And I've seen several homesteading influencers who are women that say, like, talk about feminism and how this was an active choice for them. And if they hadn't found their husband, like, they would not be homesteading because they wouldn't feel comfortable doing this if it wasn't with someone who honored them and their autonomy and their sovereignty. And so I do think it's important, like, at least to me in consuming content, I appreciate that. And it makes it easier for me to, like, oh, and now I want to follow this pancake recipe you posted because I like you, you know?
Right.
And I think it's the same the other way around, where it's like, oh, and I know that you also hate feminists, and now I want to follow you because there is this, like, moral underpinning to it. But I think it goes both ways. I think the people who are really making money and are really grifting, not just actually trying to post about it, are being very like, my life is great and you should want to live like me. And I hate feminists because of it. And they are trying to sell you something. And then I would also say, like, easily 50%, if not 90% of the content on TikTok is monetized or advertised on. So it's also kind of impossible for anything to not be trying to sell you something, even if it's like something that feels so innocuous, like an apron, right? Like, I could buy an apron from the feminist homesteader or the Tradwife Griftwife, and it would be the same apron, but one of them I would maybe feel ethical about purchasing and the other one I wouldn't. That was probably way more information than you were looking for on that, but
it's all good. I love it. I love hearing about it. No, it's just, I mean, yeah, I guess there is that idea of no matter what, you're always advertising, right? I mean, no matter what you're marketing, like, so, you know, anything you put out there, you're putting it out. You know, it's like in The Good Place, right? Which I was rewatching the other, not too long ago. And at one point, Eleanor's trying to increase, in the first season, she's trying to increase her point total. And is doing so intentionally by, like, holding the door for people and all of these other, and then she's like, no, it's never going to work because I'm doing it to get something versus just doing it because I want to do it. You know, like, there's a, and you know, I guess that's a question of intent, right? No one,
right.
No, you know, only you can judge your own intent. That, you know, when I used to be, God knows the heart. Well, okay, I know my heart if I really listen to it. I'm the only one.
So God
who really
does know the heart,
right? So God knows the heart, absolutely. But that's why my definition of God is kind of me, you know, in that sense, because I'm the only one who really knows. Yeah, you know, you may have some idea. You're probably right on some things, wrong on some things. No matter how well anyone knows me, it's because that's you know, what hideth in the heart of a man. You know, no one knows. And I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about when we were talking about materialists, about the guy who committed a sexual assault. And it's like, well, you never really know what somebody else is capable of in, you know, in certain circumstances. You know, no one does, only God, if you will. But you're right. I mean, I guess just by merely putting it out there, you're putting it out there for a reason. You're proselytizing, right? No matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing this thing. I want you to see this, you know, me doing this thing. And the assumption is I do this thing, maybe you want to do it too. Right? I mean, at the end of the day, I like doing this thing. You know, I want you to know about this thing that I'm doing. Do it, I guess, no matter what, right? At the end of the day, that's the goal. It's likes, clicks, all of that stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. The last thing, I know we're kind of running long here, as we are wont to do. But there was one quote in the original TikTok that I just really, really hit a chord with me the first time I saw it. And this second time I wrote it down because I just think it's so powerful. Is these are the women that march for your rights even when you're trampling theirs. And ooh, like, it makes me emotional to think about. But what does that bring up for you?
Honestly, a reverence in some senses for, because I agree with the truth of that statement way more so than men, like on average. I mean, again, are there men who would do that exact same thing? Unquestionably. But I would say, again, as a former statistician, knows probability, like, odds are that, if you have an individual who is engaging in that sort of behavior where they're standing up for rights, even though you're trampling theirs, chances are, I mean, odds are good. I think that it's going to be a woman, not a man, who's doing that. Just again, not so blah blah blah. But so for me, it's genuinely a bit of reverence in terms of and not in a holy worship kind of sense of reverence. I guess it's just more like it's a sacred thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's in a sense holy. I mean, but not religious holy. It
Right.
has meaning. It's set apart. It's a beautiful thing. And God, the world would be so much worse without women who are willing to do that. And that's what I realize. And it's who I want my daughter to be. It's why I do this. It's why I do this podcast, because I feel every woman is that woman. I don't care if you're the traddest of tradwives. You carry that same fucking blood inside of you to be able to do that. And I don't know. I just don't want any of that beauty, that strength to be fucking beaten down by bullshit. That's all. Like,
yeah,
because I think the world's a better place. I think the world's a better place when men and women walk side by side in their power together. Because I don't believe there's a feminine. There's a divine feminine and there's a divine masculine in every single fucking one of us. And so to deny that is to deny who you are, and to say, oh, because I have a penis, I'm different. No, the divine feminine still lives inside of me in the same way the divine masculine lives inside of you. It may come out in different ways. It may show up in different ways, but we all have that same, both parts inside of us, because that's how we do anything. It takes both. But there's a part of me that gets very righteously angry when in the world we're living in today, where the feminine is left discarded like a dish rag, that's something that, well, that should be upheld. Like, that should be honored in every way, shape, and form. And it's why I'm here. And so that's what I guess that's what it fills me with. And I think people, I hope, can see it's a genuine, when I talk about this, it's not, there's no points here. Like, it's really how I feel. I
Yeah.
I love partnering and being around and having the energy of the feminine around. Like, it's just who I am. It's my design. And that's, I'm okay with that. Like, that doesn't, but I also think that I have a responsibility, because of who I am and how I look and how I can present, to be a light as well. Like, it's not just, it would be very comfortable for me to just not like completely vacate myself from other men and just exclusively focus in feminine spaces. I mean, I'm a therapist, which is traditional. Well, I mean, traditionally was a male space, then became a completely female space. But we need more men to do this, because I can work, I think I can not help. I don't help. Help isn't the right word, because it presumes too much about me, that somehow I'm able to do shit because I'm flawed like everyone else. But you know what? Like, my energy can help other people to see I can try to be an example in everything I can do. And I can say the things that other people, like this content creator that we just went through, who might be scared to say. And it happens organically. But yeah. So whether, and I feel that way about every tradwife, the dommiest dom that ever dommed. Like, I feel the same, whatever that fucking means. I don't even know.
Right.
But that same spark is there, and it's beautiful, and the world would be so much shittier without it. And that's true, by the way, of even the most, with seeming least feminist people out there. You know, that spark is still there. Like I find it so interesting with the whole thing going on with what's her name in Georgia, Marjorie, who's having sort of like
Marjorie Taylor Greene, yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, you know, obviously is not somebody whose beliefs I necessarily espouse. I think is pretty clear. I think that you know, but I still appreciate her voice, even when I don't agree with it, because she's able to, at the very least, she's willing to like use her voice on things that are, I mean, I actually, again, I don't necessarily say that I admire her or I don't know that I admire anybody, but at the same time, I feel I like the fact that she's using her voice to promote things that are wrong. Like, it is wrong to take away healthcare from people. I don't think that's a feminist or a patriot. Like, that's just a shitty thing to do. Is that, like, healthcare should be a right, not a privilege of the few. All of that. So I don't know where I'm going with that, other than to say I am honored to be in this space for as long as I can be. I will not, you know, I will not stop, but I am teachable. So on anything I've talked about, if there's listeners, viewers, other folks who want to teach me something, I'm here to listen. Like and that goes on both sides. Where have I missed it? Where have we missed it? You know, what are we not seeing on any of the sides here? I'm open to listen. You know, I'm going to judge and, you know, judge in the sense of, do I agree with this? Do I disagree with this? Why? I'd think about it, be thoughtful about it. But I want to hear different points of view, because there's a truth. Like, there's just all half truths anyway. So let's get to know each other and stop the bullshit. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I agree with you. And I think that there's a really hard truth about, you know, in this kind of almost going back to the imaginal versus the real, you know, there is something so difficult on holding a truth universal that to me is, you know, Imago Dei. We all have some spark within us that is inherently whole and worthy. And I believe in the goodness of that, and the goodness of human beings, and in the divinity and holiness and wholeness and truth of that within all of us. And I think that's why, for me, it is so heartbreaking when you see people so deeply betray that light within themselves that allows them to so deeply despise and stifle and try to snuff out that light in others. And any instance that you see anyone making progress towards honoring their own light is progress that deserves to be celebrated. And for me, I will say there is a difference in you know, holding that truth universal, but then also coming down to reality and being able to say, you know, we're probably a little different on this, in that, like, yeah, I believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene has that wholeness, that truth somewhere inside of her, and I hope one day that she fully taps into it. But I do have some animosity towards a lot of what she has preached, and I think until, you know, a lot of that is changed, we don't see eye to eye. And I'm trying to think of how to say this in a way that's accurate to my belief. That is, it is this quote, right? But I will still fight for her rights. I will still fucking march for her rights, even as she tramples mine. And I think I am in the right to be mad and angry and full of disdain for the things that she has done, while also saying, but I know there's a light in there, and that light deserves defending, even from herself, right? And maybe that is a little narcissistic to say that I know what's best for the light within her. Like, I suppose she does get to determine what she views that as. But I think if everyone's truly acting from a place of truth and wholeness, we only see each other's light, and you wouldn't be so full of hate, but it gets really complicated. It gets complicated for me in this like universal truth versus like this reality. How do we operate? And to me, that's coherence, trying to bridge that gap between the two. And yeah, and it's hard juggling this universal belief and still fighting for people's rights, despite all of the hurt and harm that is caused. And I think to tie it back into the TikTok itself that we started with in the conversation around toxic masculinity, one thing that I see often is men will say, well, we need more men's mental health. We need more advocates for men's mental health. Why aren't you talking about men's mental health? And I'm like, I will be the first one to sign your petition. I will be the first one to donate. How come when a man does post something on Instagram or TikTok that is vulnerable, the people supporting him in the comments are women, and the people telling him he is weak are men? So I think we need to be realistic with ourselves in like, are you really saying that you believe that? Guys out there that are saying, well, why don't you advocate for men? You only advocate for women. Great. You advocate for men. I'm advocating for women. You're right. You advocate for men. If you think that that's important, go raise money for men's mental health. Go start the men's group. And like you said, would it be easier for you to say, I'm just going to stay in women's spaces because I love women's spaces and feminine energy? Beautiful. But also you've talked about how like when you do hang out in groups with your guy friends and locker room talk starts happening and all of that stuff, like how you engage with that matters, and that moves the needle in those spaces too. Like it does go both ways. And I've also gotten some comments. Well, we've gotten some comments about this, but then also I've gotten some comments on some other TikToks I've made that use the words toxic masculinity, and we'll get comments that say, well, it's not masculinity if it's toxic. And I'm always like, I agree, but I think our definition of masculinity is very different. And to me, healthy masculinity is not toxic. And when I say toxic masculinity, I mean this self-stifling, the masculinity that tells you can't be vulnerable, that tells you as a man to stamp out your own light. That is toxic. And I completely agree. That's not true masculinity. True masculinity is exactly what you were talking about at the beginning, that is seeking a teammate, a partner that does challenge you, that helps you to grow, that you trust and you can be vulnerable with. And even outside of looking for a partner, true masculinity to me is kind of the same definition of true femininity. Like, of course there are certain like energetic differences there when we think about, the qualities that we tend to assign to one or the other. But if we're just talking about like what truth of that energy is when it lives within you, because we all have both within us, if you are being just holding your true masculinity and your true femininity, you will be fully balanced between the two within all of us. And that is just allowing your truth to shine in a balanced way. And that to me is non-toxic masculinity and non-toxic femininity, is the balance, is that bridging.
I love that. I love that. I love that. So can we be more balanced? How do we, how do we listen to that? How do we, I think to me, it's about what is one thing I think we can do, or our listeners can do, or is just to notice your interactions. Just take a day and just notice how you think about things. Just notice what goes through your head. Notice, because we have, XD thousand thoughts every day, as people will say, blah, 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 blah. But how many of them, have you taken the time to really listen, like examine those thoughts, to judge them, not in a sense of, again, good or bad, but in a sense of, is this expansive or is this restrictive? And I don't understand why choosing to limit anybody, to say this is all you get, you're limited in this way, your power has to, and man or woman, like, that is not expansive in any way, shape, or form. To say all I can be is you have to, the only woman I want is a tradwife. That is not an expansive viewpoint in general. I mean, it's valid. You can have it. In the same way, I can go take 50 Tylenol if I want to right now. I'm free to do that. Probably not a good idea. Probably not gonna have to be on any more of our podcasts if I do that. But my point is, though, just if you just take some time to think about all of this stuff, like, what is one reaction you've had today that you want to just examine a little bit? Not judge, not beat yourself up, because we could sit here and play the blame game. Like,
right.
We've all had interactions we wish we could take back. But why did you have them? Why did you get so upset? What is it about the interaction? Just to note that mindfulness is always it does come back to mindfulness and noticing, because you're not the one who the you that's you. There is no like you're both masculine and feminine. You're both of those things. We all are. And there is no, like, if you just start from the perspective of that, I'm not broken and I don't need to be fixed. I just need to find out who I am and live true to that. But you'll notice these things that are holding you back, whether I have to be a tradwife or I need a tradwife or women are this, men are this, all of that is just mistaken assumptions. It's just, it's beliefs that came from somewhere, and there's valid reasons why you have those beliefs, but they're not true. They're complete bullshit on all, in every way, shape, or form. They're just not true. So why do you want to live your life in a way that is in fact just on stuff that you that you just believe, that's other people have basically put in your mind, that you've been conditioned to believe it's not what you really want? So I guess that's all to say, let your freak flag fly, whatever that is. Like, be you, but just do so intentionally. Like, don't pretend you're on a crusade and you need to change other people's mind because society's dying and we need traditional men and this, that, and the other, and you're doing just own it. Like, that's all. Like, be authentic. If that's who you are authentically, you want to make jams and jellies in Homestead, cool. Like, dude, a guy could want to do that, and I think it's awesome. Like, dude, I wish I wanted to can and like grow my own vegetables, and like that seems really, like, I have a lot of admiration for that as a thing. But
it's so much work.
It's so much work. But you know what? If you love doing it, is it work? Like, that's and there's things I do that other people would be like, oh God, I can't believe you do that. Like, and that's what's cool about it, but it's got to be authentic. And if it's coming from a place of hurt or a place of fear or a place of restriction, I don't know. Like, why do you want to live that way? Like, be authentic. And I mean, and listen, this is all for me too. Like, am I completely 100% authentic in every area of my life? Jesus, no.
100% of the time.
Yes, I am never inauthentic.
Right.
But you know what? As time goes on, I become more and more authentic.
Yeah.
That's all. Every day is a little bit better. Like, a little bit more authentic. So
one thing
that's my
that, yeah. One thing that you said was just to start noticing, and like that does go back to mindfulness, and that's really the place to start this work, is just like notice it and question a certain reaction you have. How, for someone who's maybe never like tried something like that at all, because I know when I first started practicing meditation, I had already been in therapy for a while and I had like practiced journaling, and so not that it came easily, it's still a difficult practice, but I think I was maybe primed to already have some like predisposition to that style of introspection. How do you practice that on a daily basis, and how would you like coach someone, I guess, into like starting to do that?
So how would I coach somebody um is to just do one thing. Like, there's no perfect here. Like, you know, if all you can do is take 2 minutes to just breathe and reflect on something and just focus on one area of your body for 1 minute, or do box breathing and just notice, just slow down. And there's no, you can't do it right, you can't do it wrong. The only way you can fail is to just stop doing it and not do it. Like, if I guarantee you, if you just spend 2 minutes a day reflecting on the day that you had, or in the morning reflecting on what you want to get done, or, but again, for what we're talking about, it's, hey, what did I do something that was incongruent? It's really spending the time to map out, who you are. And so much of us don't want to do that because it's difficult. And so, I mean, honestly, it's not something anyone can do it on their own. There's not some magic that I coach, but it's having somebody there to help you do that, and to hold you accountable in some senses to doing doing that work can be helpful. And and being introspect, and then having somebody to validate what you're feeling, and see, because that's I don't even love the word coach. I really prefer the word guide in some senses, because
Same.
it's not, I mean, I guess sometimes there's coaching. There is an encouragement factor of, you've got this, I believe in you.
Right.
And I think that's very real. But there's also a guide piece of it, because you know uh, it's all of this stuff is stuff everyone can do on their own. I truly believe that. The thing is, it's so much easier when you have a guide. That's all. Like, I'll give you an example. We went to Gettysburg and had and we could have, and we did an audio tour that we got online. We got an app that did an audio tour, and it's like, it was great. You drive to these places, you hear these things, but that's very different, and it was a great experience. But that's also very different from having one of the registered guides come and give you the backstory and give you guide you through. And that's the difference. Like, anyone can do this stuff, and you should. And if you're not, I mean, I can't make you, but you should. You it it would be beneficial to you as an individual to do this. But when you're serious about it, then you bring somebody else in to and that's the other thing. I'm unlike, my viewpoint is that I do not have an aspiration to ever be in having somebody as a client forever. In terms of, like, repeatedly, like every week for years and years and years. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because for a lot of complex trauma, for things that depending on your attachment style, you may need years to get to the point where you even feel comfortable to do the deep work. So you need that. And that's beautiful. And that's why there's many, many great people out there who can help you with that, and who want to do that. And that's their gifted, that's their talent. And if you need that, find that person and do that. That's not what I want to do. That's not my view of things. My view of things is to be there to get you to the next level. And then, maybe there's another coach for something else. Or maybe you come back, for a checkup or something. But if I don't think you're broken, I can't fix you. and so it really kind of makes it easy from my perspective of, you're not broken. So there's nothing for me to fix. Now, can we connect? Can I energize you? Can I teach? Can I teach you something? Can I, all of that? Yes, 1,000 times yes. But I'm not gonna fix you. God, what an arrogant thing to think you need fixing, and that, God forbid, I could be the one to fix you. It's easier if you're not broken, then I don't need to fix you. Isn't it wonderful that we can just talk and be together and see what comes up? And that to me is truly, like, the guiding part. It's one who walks alongside, an advocate in some senses, and not in the traditional sense of, oh, I'm fighting for you, although I am, but not in the way of, oh, I'm fighting for you. If you are a client or a friend, even, like, I am fighting for you in in the spiritual, I guess I would say, like is where, because that's where I think all of the battles are done anyway. But I digress, and I'm showing my woo woo, which is fine. I don't mind, but I believe it. Everybody should have a little woo woo anyway. So
I really like the word partner, because it does feel like partnering with someone for their work, but I have taken to using the word guide because it's really hard to brand yourself as a life partner. When it's like I'm not offering that, but I'm like, I want to partner with you to help you with your life, but I'm not not
partner is a loaded word,
right? Exactly.
There's a connotation.
Yeah, so I've been using guide as well because I struggle with the word coach too. And I'll throw out there, the links to work with both Dennis and I are always in the description box of any episode. Wherever you're listening or watching, if this is something that you're like, you know what, I actually would like a guide, and you resonate with one of us, our emails are down there, our websites are down there. Please, we would love to hold that space with you. Yeah, whatever that looks like.
And reach out to us and see. You'll know, and we'll know if it makes sense. Like that's the way I view it. Like I don't just want clients. Like I'm called to certain people. Those are who I want to work with, and
it's a mutual choice.
Exactly. Like exactly. Because I don't think I'm so great that I believe I could help do I believe that just being around somebody is enough? And I do, because I think we all have a presence, and I have a presence, you have a presence. Like that does 90% of the work anyway. Everything we talk about is just fluff. Like the real work is done in presence, as far as I'm concerned, is in being.
Yeah, well, and one thing I was going to say about that too, like depending on people's different goals, that you're not really interested in the like forever lifetime client. And I would say be wary of anyone who's trying to sell you a lifetime of anything like that. Just be wary of that. But I'll also own, I've been in therapy with the same therapist for 13 years. And granted, that means I started seeing her when I was 12. So there is that. And there's a lot to learn from someone as you're growing and changing as drastically as you do from 12 to now being 25. Like, I continually have more to learn, especially during these years. But also, I think a big reason why that space has become so special and beneficial for me is because of her presence, and because our relationship now is just such a safe space for me, because she knows everything and is pretty much the only person in my life that knows everything, and I have said the most shameful things to, and has still looked me in the eyes and said, you're worthy, period. Like, not just despite, but because of. And that's I think what you and I are both really passionate about, that piece of you're not broken, you are inherently worthy. Yeah,
to every single person listening to this, you are fucking worthy, just the way you are right now. It's a hard concept, but it's real and it's true, and I mean it. 100%. I don't care who you are, what you've done, you're still worthy. That doesn't mean we're gonna be friends, depending on what. But,
right.
But I can still believe you're worthy, because you are. Period. So on that, I love where we went today, Rudy.
I think that's the perfect button to end on. I do too. Thank you for sending this TikTok, and it was a really beautiful synchronicity that it was, oh my gosh, I just saved this too. And so I'm glad. I think it was a really beautiful jumping off point to chat about. So as always, everyone, let us know your thoughts down below on anything that we've chatted about, and we'd love to hear from you.
Amen. Wonderful as always, Reese.
Yes, we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bow Down is a weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that explores esoteric and empowered feminism.
Please subscribe to Bow Down wherever you may be listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a like, a 5-star rating, and a review. And if there's anyone you think would enjoy this episode, or maybe just needs to hear it, please share it.
If you want to stay up to date on all things Bow Down, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at the Cohere Collective, and check out other content and offerings at www.thecoherecollective.com.
If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, I encourage you to head to www.thecoherecollective.com/life-coaching.
If you're interested in working with Dennis to shed your mask and embrace your desires, you can email Dennis at dennis@theheartstoybox.com.
A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for Bow Down's music. You can find him on Instagram at j.corbe. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
And as always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. And until next time, love.